Portion of this video is sponsored by Commentier. These foldy boys are expensive for the cost of the Z Fold 5 and the Pixel Fold. I could have bought a Jaguar, not one of those, but this one. Could have bought a Mercedes, could have bought over 1,000 gallons of gas, or if I was super hungry, over 2,000 slices of pizza. But instead, I have almost $4,000 of foldable phones here that I gotta compare and pick a winner. Instead of me just kind of making it up, I figured these phones are pretty powerful. They should defend themselves. I got that aspect ratio, that's perfect. And when you want that sweet pixel magic sauce and you're taking pictures, I got you. Machine learning, hardware. Pixel Fold is your boo. I got a real front-facing camera on my tablet side, so you can actually use it for stuff. If you want a kid, the Pixel Fold's fine. But if you want a grown man, the Z Fold 5 is for you. This is my 5th generation. I've been doing this for half a decade and I've perfected it, whereas he's just learning it. My processor might get like a little warm, but at least my battery's not gonna explode. That got weird. I'm just gonna go full Thanos and do it myself. I've been thinking about this video from before these phones were ever even announced. I have an irrational love of foldables, but I'm starting to become a bit more rational. They have to add something more than like a regular rectangle phone, right? They're generally more expensive, they're thicker than regular phones, they're usually more fragile than regular phones. Like, you gotta get something better and different to what you get from your average rectangle. And both these phones are doing the same thing, but like slightly different. All right, hey, Future John here. I actually switched to one of these phones. I'm now using... So let's start with the hardware. I think that is like the big, giant story here. And it is very clear that both of these phones were well thought out, well designed, and I think really well engineered, which is a big credit, I think, to what Google's done, because obviously their first device, whereas on the Sammy side, this is Gen 5. It would have been easy for Google to like copy Samsung's homework, make it look a bit different, and go for a tall and narrow screen, but they didn't. They bucked the trend, and I think that this was an absolutely brilliant move. From the aspect ratio to 5.8 inches, which I think is the absolute perfect size. I could use a phone that is 5.8 inches. I could use a phone of that aspect ratio. It feels good in the hand. There's enough room to type. Video looks good on it. Images look good on it. Scrolling mindlessly through social media looks good on that outer display. Samsung clearly went with if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Let's just make minor changes and hope nobody notices, and that's essentially what we have with the Z Fold 5. It's a 6.2 inch screen. It's tall and narrow. We've seen it for the past few generations. To me, it is hard to like type on because it's so narrow. The keyboard gets all scrunchied up, but it's definitely usable. You can do whatever you want on it. But I did find myself opening it up more and using the 7.6 inch inner screen than even I did with the Pixel Fold, because the outer screen there was so good. So this is where I start to get, I think, maybe a bit hypocritical and confused. I'm not a perfect person. So I love, like I said, the outer screen of the Pixel Fold. When I open it up and get to the 7.6 inch inner screen, it's almost too wide because it's double that 5.8 inches. Whereas on the Z Fold, the 7.6 inch inner screen, same size, different aspect ratio, just feels better in the hand. If I learned anything from Pixel Folds and a lot of Burger King commercials, cannot have it your way. Obviously, picking the right, very expensive foldable is a hard decision. But one decision that does not need to be difficult is what is going to wake you up in the morning. And for me, like, legitimately, despite this being sponsored for the past couple years, I have been paying for Commentier coffee. You might not be familiar with them, maybe you are. They take a kind of unique approach to coffee. They send flash frozen pods, and they're flash frozen at sort of like the peak of their freshness. And they're working with some of the best sort of coffee brewers out there. And this isn't like just like regular, like a frozen coffee. This is like flash frozen at like peak freshness. So what you're getting is the absolute perfect cup of coffee. It's never gonna be burnt. It's always going to taste great. And as somebody, again, who's been using this legitimately for years, every cup of coffee tastes good. This coffee is gourmet, delicious and tastes better than anything else you can get from a pod. Also works well as iced coffee too in the summer right now, depending on wherever you guys are. But if you're in the market for a new cup of coffee, you want to step up your coffee game, you want to save money from not buying a big expensive machine but still want the quality coffee, or you want to stop handing over like $7 a day to your local coffee shop, do it at home, and I can pretty much guarantee get a better cup, you're gonna want to give Cometeer a shot. You can join the future of coffee with Cometeer and get a curated starter pack of their most popular roasts. So go to cometeer.com/John Rettinger to get a free 8-pack and travel mug when you sign up. That is a free 8-pack of coffee and travel mug when you sign up at Cometeer. So that's COMETEER.com/John Rettinger. When you open the screens up though, I think you start to notice a difference in the hardware here too. Samsung is the screen king for a reason. These screens are absolutely beautiful. And one of the big changes with the Z Fold 5 is the inner screen is brighter. At 1750 nits, you notice that versus 1200 on the Pixel. One of the other big changes from the Z Fold 5 is the hinge. And this is where, again, you can see Samsung's making phones for a while. The hinge now goes almost flat. Zero gap, no air, no dust, no dirt, no grime. It is awesome to see, especially after seeing the evolution of these phones from Gen 1 to Gen 5. The hinge is where they start to I think, flex the most. And Samsung was super proud of it. There's less moving parts in it, less stuff to break, less dirt that can get in from the outside of it. It is a really good hinge. Google took a very different approach here, put the hinge essentially on the outside, gave you a bit bigger bezels, which I don't mind at all. I actually really like the hinge on the Pixel Fold, but it doesn't open all the way, which doesn't sound like a big deal. It's like 2 degrees off. And when you hold it in your hand, it's fine. When you put it down on a table to use, it just seems weird that it doesn't do that. You can stretch it open, which always is a weird feeling when you're holding a foldable phone. I'm worried I'm gonna crack the thing in half. Also, when it comes to the hinge on the Pixel, I wanna stop the bezel hate. I like what they did. I get why they did it. It works. It's from people complaining, I think, that haven't used the phone. The bezel completely goes away. Plus, you get a real camera when it's opened, hidden in them chunky boy bezels. Whereas on the Z Fold 5, you've got an in-screen one that's really only good for video calls. So I feel like Doug DeMuro here talking about quirks. There's a lot of quirks and features, I guess, on the Pixel that just are a bit strange to me. The volume button placement and the fingerprint placement, I don't know why they would do that. They put the fingerprint on top of the volume, which even if you have giant hands, it's more natural to have it on the bottom. I think I never got used to it. I never got the muscle memory right on the Pixel Fold. It is a small, minor thing, and probably over a few months it wouldn't bother me as much, but I definitely appreciated the normal placement that you've got on the Z Fold 5. Also have on the Z Fold 5 the ability to use an S Pen if you want, which is awesome, but you got nowhere to store it unless you get a special case to put it in. I'm still surprised there's not a proper silo to put that thing right on into it. So if you're just doing this on paper, talking about battery life, the Pixel would wipe the floor with the Z Fold 5. It's got a 4800 mAh battery, where Samsung is a paltry 4400. So battery life on the Z Fold 5 has actually been incredibly impressive. Slightly less impressive on the Pixel Fold. Now, allegedly with Android 14 beta, those have been fixed and addressed, so I assume it will get better over time. But right now, despite having more milliamp hours, the Z Fold 5 is still raining on battery. They're also running different processors. We've got Tensor in one and Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 in the other. I have honestly noticed no difference from a processor standpoint here either. Perhaps I will over time. Tensors haven't always aged well as the phones go month over month. But right now at launch, these are extremely capable phones that'll do whatever you want from a multitasking standpoint, or running games or apps, whatever. You'll notice no difference with these phones. I think cameras are probably the weirdest part about foldables. You've got these crazy expensive phones that have never really used flagship camera sensors because they're too thick to put on an already thick phone when closed. So let's just blind camera test this, right? You got quasi the best from Google, and you've got sort of the best from Samsung, kind of going head to head. So here's some pictures. The portrait mode on these was the main portrait mode from the back cameras, not the front cameras. Look at highlights, look at the sky, Look at the green that you see here. Look at the blue of the water. Can you, well, first of all, which one do you like better? A or B? Let me know in the comments. And can you guess which one was which? All right, just so you know, A is the Z Fold 5, B was the Pixel Fold. So both of these cameras, I think, actually take great photos. Even though the Pixel is missing the same sort of hardware as the Pixel 7 Pro, it is a very pixely in its photos, which is a gigantic compliment, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart. The main difference you see with this, I think, is in the portrait shot. The Pixel is handling colors much better and is a bit more balanced overall, but that is not to say that Samsung is bad. I think in most cases, people would probably prefer the photos out of the Z Fold because it produces brighter, kind of more punchy photos. I think the Pixel does generally a better job on skin tones, especially darker skin tones. Samsung, they make T-Mobile proud. You got a lot of magenta showing. Typical high saturation Samsung thing. I do wish we had more optical zoom here, but I get it. You're a size constraint. Both of these are really good, but I feel like it's a cop-out to be like, they're both great, whichever one you get. Because I gotta pick one, because it makes the video better. So Pixel camera overall is slightly better, but if you like that high contrasty stuff, the Samsung is gonna do what Samsung's gonna do. So I think it's up to now, it's pretty safe to say that both these phones give you a pretty compelling package, right? They both have their own strengths and weaknesses. But where that starts to change is when it comes to software with the Pixel Fold. You'd think software would be like a massive blowout, like Lakers versus Bulls, just blowing them out of the water.
It was at this moment that he knew. He up.
Perfect. Like, I can't understand why Google is not giving you more customization when it comes to software. And I've talked a lot on social media and that kind of stuff about not being able to customize the inner screen and the outer screen of the Pixel. It's the same on both. Now, you might like that, but certainly on Android, one of the best benefits of Android is customization. And I feel like that's a very Apple decision, not a very Google decision. So maybe it was because it's their first phone, maybe it'll come when software gets upgraded to Android 14, I don't know. But right now, it is not there, and it's weird. I use my phone differently on the outer screen versus the inner screen, and I want it to look different on both of those. That alone is very weird. Samsung almost treats the screens as separate phones if you wanted to. If you want it to mirror, you have that option there as well. You are getting kind of the best of Google, what they can do with Android, with sort of the best of Samsung's now half a decade of experience making foldables. And that is really apparent with software. And it is absolutely nuts that coming from the maker of Android, you figure out if anybody, they would give you the most options, and it's a little confusing as to why it's not there yet. If you're not looking for much customization, you just want sort of one experience that's gonna be universal across the device, you'll be happy with everyone you go. But if you wanna be able to customize more and treat the outer screen separately, that's very clearly an easy decision to make. So this might seem like a pretty obvious answer, right? Which one is going to win? But it's not as obvious as you think. If you have pretty much any version of the Z Fold before the 5, you're not gonna notice a giant difference when you choose to upgrade. In fact, if you want a different experience, I'd probably say for you Z Fold owners, and you wanna get something new, you got $800 to bring a hole in your pocket, I'd go for the Pixel. All right, hey, Future John here. I actually switched to one of these phones. I'm now using the Z Fold 5 as my everyday phone for a few months. Kind of give it a shot, see how it performs. But ultimately, it's the more mature software on the Samsung side that has made me go to the Z Fold over the Pixel. Now, the Z Fold 5 is not a perfect phone. The tall and narrow aspect ratio on the outer screen is still a bit weird and hard to reach with only one hand. Being able to have those home screen customizations on both really makes it feel like more of a complete product. I am hopeful that Google will stick with the Pixel Fold. Now, Google is known for a lot of things, but chief among them is killing products that are really good. They've done it with hardware before, certainly done it with a ton of their software and apps, but I'm hoping the Pixel Fold will get multiple generations. So I think by the time we get to Gen 2, Gen 3, Gen 4, Gen 5, you will have a really well-rounded, pretty awesome and epic foldable. And a lot of it is software. And if Google updates this over the next weeks or months, then we'll revisit this right now. But as the software stands in early August when I'm filming this, for my money, and it's a lot of money, I'm going with the team that has the experience, that's been doing it for a while, and I'm gonna pick up the Samsung Z Fold 5.